My name is Daniel Ramone. I'm coming to you live right now from Costa Rica, and it's a beautiful day here. And I was just out early, and location is really beautiful. And I just want to tell a little bit quickly about my story, how I ended up here, and the idea of main character modalities. Um, just right away, if you want to follow me on Instagram, you can find me at the.daniel.channel. We're going to be filling that. Lots of information and just more ideas on how to live what I call a main character life. First thing I'm going to talk about is, gosh, how did I end up in Costa Rica? Well, 2 years ago, while living in Iowa, I was having really, and this was around the winter time, and I was working on some past life / kind of current life. I've worked on real estate projects, so doing some remodeling, and while driving and just being out during the winter time in Iowa, I was having this anxiousness as if, I really needed to shift where I was living. I really needed it, like where I was living didn't resonate with me anymore. And that just showed up as sort of anxious feelings of thoughts of like, man, I really, should maybe leave within, maybe travel somewhere. And then if I fast forward a year, I did end up leaving like in a February timeframe. And fast forward about a year later, I was having the same anxious thoughts around the same time, like December, January timeframe. And this would have been kind of 2019 coming into 2020. And those same anxious thoughts, of course, because I listened to these impulses when they come to me, led me again to leave. And the first time I left, I ended up in the Caribbean, a nice warm environment. And this time I ended up here in Costa Rica. And let me just check my time here so I can for everyone. Yeah. And so, yeah, what got me here in Costa Rica was just this tiny thought, this tiny to change your location. And I would say over the last year, I've really realized how much information comes to me just in my insights and my intuition, and that I'm constantly being guided. Like on my whole life, that's been a consistent pattern that has, I would say, allowed me to live a very simple life, but a life where I've been fulfilled of the things that I've wanted to do. I've traveled, all over. And that simple thought is that life is happening. And so what I've wanted to present to everyone today is that there's these modalities that we can live by that allow us to really own who we know who we are, how to discover that. And then from there, we can really start to build out the life that we want. So I want to present maybe like 5 ways that person is not living in their in as in alignment with these principles as these main character modalities. They might be one. If you are living your life and you feel like your time and energy is spent doing things that you don't enjoy, that one means that you're not in alignment with your main character. So 2, if there are people in your life and you are consistently scratching your head like, why do I have this person in my life? Again, that's another idea that you're not living from that main character space. 3, if life seems to happen to you and not for you, if things just seem to happen and they sort of blindside you, again, another sign that we're not living from that main character space. If it feels like you're constantly reacting to situations, and the key word here is react. A lot of things in our language are clues of what's really going on. So if you're constantly reacting to situations and you seem to be blindsided, again, that's the fourth sign. And the fifth and last, if it feels like someone else is in control of you and what happens in your life, and you know, with everything happening in the world, many people are feeling that way. So I'm really loving the opportunity to present to you what these modalities are and how to integrate them into your existence. You have your energy, you have sovereignty, meaning that you have your basic needs are met, and actually you're putting out energy into others, family members, people on Facebook. You're uplifting. You really have energy both for yourself as well as for those around you. So these modalities, there's again 5 modalities, and it's really simple. Know who you aren't to know who you are. Okay. And really that's going to highlight the idea that we came in with a soul script, as I call it. So we came in with this character that of course gets clouded by and covered up by society and just the typical things that we're asked to do in society. And there's nothing wrong with doing things that society asks, but if we're not, then it's just another sign that we need to go deeper into understanding who and what we are at our core. And there's a way to do that. There's many ways to do that actually, but there's some ways that I've discovered to do that. And just really quickly, in every movie, there's the same characters. Okay. So there's like anywhere between 9 and 12 characters that exist in most stories. And most of us at any point are acting out 1 or 2 or 3 of those characters. And so it's good to understand who we're being, and how often we're being that, and if that's actually beneficial to our life and those around us. So that's number 1. You came in with the soul script, and you know, that's a beautiful thing to do, because we don't actually have to work as hard as what we think to live our life. Change your energy. So remember I told the story originally, I was in Iowa, wintertime. It was just, and there's nothing wrong with Iowa. There's nothing actually wrong with the wintertime, but it didn't resonate with me anymore. And so I knew that I had to change that environment. And for those of us that, you know, especially now where it feels like we're contracted and constricted on where we can go, part of changing your environment is changing the internal environment that we experience. And so just like when we experience a going and there's these scenes that are popping out in front of us, those scenes are actually dictating how we feel. And so we're going to play into that, and we're going to say, okay, that's very good programming. That brings something out in me that maybe I didn't even realize was there. We're going to take that same, I'm going to call it a trick that movies use to really engage their audience. And we're going to do that for our own personal upliftment. So we're our own imagination, in our own consciousness, in our own real, as they call it, the real world, instead of the REAL, we're going to call it the real world, the REEL, and really understand like what's playing on that reel. Design in our own minds, in our own bodies, in our own sensations, really start to re-engage that imagination, just like as if you were 7 years old, and really start to play things out that are you. So once you understand who you are and you start to tap into who you are, you're gonna then understand the types of scenes that you actually want to experience. And that's maybe gonna get to some of the people that are lean more into their logic. I would say I'm about 50-50. I have a background, engineering background. And so I have all those logical circuitries that happen in my brain, but then I also have this other part that I've had to develop because in the world of engineering and that cubicle life wasn't satisfying that other part of me. So again, that was understanding who I wasn't to better understand who I was. And once I started to develop that sense of creativity and I felt like, wow, I can be in a place that doesn't necessarily fulfill or satisfy me. But the key here is that I'm engaging a part of my brain, the same part of your brain that when you're watching a movie, it feels like you're there. It feels like it's really happening and the body is responding. So those same perceptions and circuitries that thing is engaging, we can use our imaginations to do the exact same thing. And it's really about bringing force to you. So that's number 2, change your scene, change your energy. Number 3 is understanding your role as director. So I would say for anyone that's tuning into this now or tuning in later, if you do anything, look up the role of a director, a movie director, and check out the responsibility that that individual has to really pull all the pieces together in order to create this film, or this, if you think of film also as like a layer, right? This film, it almost seems like you can touch it, but obviously it's just happening sort of right there on your TV screen or in the movie theater on the projector screen. So they really are coordinating a lot of different things in order for those scenes to play out. Like, understand how a director does that in the world of movies. We can actually take on that role for ourselves to better understand how to direct our own lives. So I just really want us to keep it really simple and pretend or imagine that, you know, we're studying to be a director, a film director. And there's certain things, there's certain faculties, certain know-how that we're going to need in order to fulfill that role. And instead of creating this massive production, instead of creating this big movie for everyone to watch, really we're creating something for ourselves. And that's really important, to take anything that excites us and see what we can create for ourselves, because I feel we would be surprised at how that creation process actually works. So the also engages that creative side of you, of a person. It engages working with other people. It engages with understanding and studying the script of yourself, of course, as those around you. We can also think of script as like motivation, right? What is our personal motivation? Sometimes we think of motivation as like something that we're using to gain something, which is fine. When it comes to other people, we can, again, use that same process to say, you know, what is this person or this character that I'm engaging with? What is their motivation? What are they motivated by? Or even if we go a level deeper, what are they being inspired by? So I like to, when I'm sort of experiencing life, I like to understand better the people that are around me and what's inspiring them, to ensure that if we were to become friends or create things together, that there's enough similarity, meaning that there's not a lot of contention, and not that contention is bad. We can get into that when we go into understanding your characters or your co-stars, other characters or co-stars. But sometimes just understanding the really subtle levels of of just where people are in their own lives. Again, a director is casting supporting characters and main characters into that movie, and you're doing the exact same thing in your life, right? Everyone that you're around right now is someone that you've chosen to have there. Even down to your parents. I feel that we come into life again with knowing that we're going to have a full life experience in order to really grow as a human being. And when we see children, a good example of that is when we see children come in and they're like 2 years old. I've got a 2-year-old son. He already understands so much that it took some people here time to develop, right? So he came in with this like knowing or this intuition. And so we all come in with a little bit of something to help us navigate, right? So like a mother, her job sometimes is just a guide, but that child's sensation is, or impulse is to make sure that it's eating and that it's crying when it needs something, right? So it has a natural ability to respond. And as long as we're in environments that are conducive to our growth, which many of us have experienced trauma in life. And so that's about, again, the genre, the trauma sometimes equals the drama, and dramas are not bad at all, but it's helping to develop that, again, that sense of character. So understanding the director is probably should be number one, but I feel like you're number one. So we're gonna know who you aren't to know who you are as number one. But number three is knowing your role as director. So just look up the traditional definition of that, and I think you'll receive some insight. The fourth is recognizing your co-stars. So recognizing the people that are in your life and understanding why they're there, right? And I know that could seem like this big question, like how would I ever know why this person is in my life? Well, simply put, again, because there's like 9 to 12 characters in most movies, most people are in our lives to create experiences and circumstances for us to better understand why we're also living out the life that we're living. And so I would say if there's, we'll just go through a couple examples. If there's an antagonist in your life, or if there's someone that's causing contention and, causing experiences that are unpleasant, that person is generally there to help you create that you wouldn't be able to develop if they weren't there. So think about running a marathon or training for anything. You're actually doing that to perform when you at that actual event. So what I've learned is characters that have been in my life, whether it's a parent or a sibling or a cousin or whoever, they've been there to actually help me develop a sense of knowing who I'm not, to help me better understand who I am. And it creates, if there was ever any contention, which oftentimes relationships can have that dynamic, if there was ever any contention, I can look back on those relationships and say, wow, I'm actually a better person because I experienced that, right? So that's kind of the antagonist. Then there's, one of the other main characters that's probably in almost every movie is like the wise, the person that's in their wisdom, or the wise one, or the teacher. And because we're all teachers and we're students, it's nice to know when we can learn from, right? And so in these movies, that wise person literally saves the day almost every time, because they have that 1 or 2 nuggets of information that help us move forward along our own personal stories, or in the movies along that story that's unfolding. So if we don't have a teacher or a wisdom keeper, or someone that is living a life that we admire, that we and we could potentially learn from that person, if you don't have that person in your movie, in your life right now, that's someone that you should absolutely find. And I'm just going to wave my hand that, you know, that I offer myself up as just someone who has realized some things in life and has some things to share that could be beneficial for one person or 10 people or 100 people. It doesn't matter. But I am here to really extend that to you. So, of course, the fourth is understanding your co-stars. We just went down the path of, you know, understanding the teacher, the wisdom keeper, as well as the antagonist. All the co-stars are been as a reflection that better allows us to navigate what's in front of us. And because this is only 30 minutes, I can't go really deep. So I'm wanting to keep it relatable, and we can all relate to movies, right? We can look up all of these. We can look up scripts. We can look up the scenes. You yourself know when you're in a space that just really resonates with you. That means that's your scene. We even have that in our language. This is not my scene, right? That means that you're probably somewhere that you should not be, and better choose where you want to be and go to that place, because we're always having an exchange with our environment, and that exchange is giving us energy or it's taking energy away. So the final main character modality is learn to act, right? And actually the full thing is learn to act. Okay, so I'm just going to break this down, and the word triggered is often in our a lot of people hear that word. If you haven't heard the word triggered, it usually means that someone has or something in your environment has created a response or a reaction or allowed something to come up into your field of emotion that maybe it feels like you don't have control of. And that's really what we're talking about. Treating that, this is going to be a total switch of how we look at being triggered. Treating that trigger as a way to, like if we were in a movie and that director said action, right? That's the trigger. So if anything is happening in your environment and it triggers you, it's the same thing. Because what's happening there is the trigger is giving you an opportunity to respond and not react. And if you look up the definition of react is simply doing the same thing over again that you've done before. Okay, so that would mean that we're acting out in a way that almost is a loop, right? And that's great if you're in a movie scene, and that's great if you have to actually, if you get it messed up the first time and you have to actually do it over and over until you get it right. And that's often what we do. But it is good, it is very beneficial to understand how to respond from your main character space. And that's to understand that that trigger is actually to the highest and best benefit, because it's giving you an opportunity to not react, but to practice your main character lines, right? So to understand, oh, right, when that action thing, these are the typical lines that I repeat in my life, right? So if a partner says X, Y, Z, and your typical response is this, that tends to create a pattern, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to turn that up some character modality and understand that is my trigger, okay? And when that action happens, you're going to, behind the scenes, not necessarily in the moment, but you're going to behind the scenes come in to understand that this is typically how I react, and this is actually how I want to think differences. This is how I normally react, right? We understand often our patterns, and if we don't, we can start to bring those things into our recollection. And react, we can then understand how we want to act, because often reacting often creates the same unpleasant situations. So those are the 5 main character modalities for anybody that's just hopping on. Know who you aren't to know who you are. The soul script. You came in with the understanding of who you were, and part of what I do is to dig 1 or 2 layers deep to main character part of you is, so you can start to practice that in your everyday life. Number 2 is change your scene, change your energy. Again, we've all said it or heard it, this is not my scene. We use that language all the time. And so situations that are conducive to our highest and best, even right now, right, in the world, this is where it's most important. Changing our scene isn't as easy. So part of changing the scene is also to change the images and the thoughts that we're playing out in our own imagination. And there's some practices that I guide people through in order to re-engage that imagination. The imagination, trust me, is the foundation that you had when you were younger that has allowed you to make it this far in life. So it's a powerful thing. Number 3 is understanding your role as director. This is probably key. It's pivotal. It's right at that halfway mark. Look up the definition of a director, see all the things that they do to bring a movie together, and apply that to your specific life, apply that to your specific circumstances. And if you're able to do half of what a director does for you, if you're able to understand who people are in your world, if you're able to understand on how to develop and create scenes that you want to place yourself in, if you want to better understand your main character lines, you coming in as the main character, and that doesn't, I also want to highlight, you being a main character takes nothing away from anyone else, but knowing who you are also helps you understand when other people know who they are or not, right? So if I'm playing with people, I want them to have an understanding of who they are, and usually that means that they've done some level of work within themselves, or work with, again, those other co-stars, which are often the teacher or the wisdom keepers. What'd you say, brother? Oh, I think you guys are unmuted, which is fine.
Sorry.
No, you're okay. You're okay. So director, that's number 3. Number 4 is to recognize your co-stars. So being better able to recognize who the people are that are around you, if they're acting in a way, or if they're behaving in a way that's maybe antagonistic or supportive. Either one of those is fine, because it's actually helping you develop a sense of who you are. But oftentimes you really don't want to live your entire life living with an antagonist, because that's just the harder way to do it. And that's cool, because there's movies that totally end with the antagonist, but oftentimes we don't leave the theater feeling very good about those. And so the last one is learn to act and not react. That's going to be key. Learning really how to respond to our situations and not to live out the same reactions that we've experienced before. That allows us to, again, understand who we are and understand how much power we have to influence our life, just on how much of our power we give away to the things that are. So I'm pretty sure I'm getting close to my 30 minutes. I know the people before went a little over. If anybody has any questions, quick. If anybody wants to get in touch with me, I can also drop my contact information. If you go to Instagram and type in the.daniel.channel, you can find me. And over the next probably month or so, videos and ideas related to this concept that will continue to dive a little deeper. We can only go so far in 30 minutes. Anybody have any questions that's on the line? Okay, cool. Again, if you want to find me, the best way I feel is going to Instagram, typing in the.daniel.channel. In my bio, there's a link. For the next 2 weeks, I'm giving away 10 free sessions. Okay, so I'm giving away 10 free sessions that I call main character activation. So we're going to spend 15 minutes to dive deeper into who you aren't, to then discover who you are, especially for those that are experiencing their lives shift really rapidly in the world right now. This is the best time to understand what is percolating up inside you and how to use that energy to navigate your life experience with a lot more intention maybe than what we were doing before. So everything that is happening, I feel, is giving us that opportunity. There's also the I've done a 50% off and a 77% off. So I'm out. Thanks everybody, appreciate you. Enjoy the day. We've got some amazing speakers. Appreciate it.